All
Welcome
right.
to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Michael Bowser.
What's up?
Name that literally is the name of the supervillain in Mario.
Yes, I actually have a tattoo of the Bowser spot from Mario Party on my ribs. So
Does
I'm
that mean you have
representing Koopa.
does that mean you have a nickname that goes behind it?
No. I mean, I just did it just some people get their last name tattooed. Since mine's Bowser, I figured I'll just get a freaking picture of Koopa. It'll be awesome.
I thought about getting the guitar player Robbie Robertson on my ass just because I hate him that much.
Well, I don't ever want to see that tattoo if you do get it, but
It's
I
that's
definitely encourage. I support that you do get it.
I mean, it would be a good tattoo because I would never have to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, first of all, I love the shirt. You're wearing a Dio shirt.
Yep.
And I first heard
Represent.
about him through one of my favorite bands, which you're going to make fun of, is the fact of Tenacious D when he had the Dio
Tenacious.
poster in his room.
Oh yeah, during the Pick of Destiny.
That's a great ass movie, and I saw that when I was way too young to be watching that movie.
I actually got into Dio. Well, my older cousins, love Dio, but through South Park, they had Dio randomly play at the end of an episode.
I can't watch South Park. The very first episode I ever saw was the Saddam Hussein movie,
Yeah.
and I was way too young to be watching something that graphic. And it was the part where they were splitting him open or sticking something up his butt. And I was like, okay, I'm good. I don't ever want to watch this show again. And this guy is now throwing up a turd.
Yeah. It actually kind of evolved over the years. Now it's almost like The Simpsons in a way. It's a real satire, and I'd recommend giving it a second shot.
Don't destroy The Simpsons for me. That was my all-time favorite cartoon.
It's a classic. It's a classic. They don't predict the future like The Simpsons do. We'll just say that.
Yeah, that's a little bit paranormal, and it kind of leads into what you kind of do. For instance, Michael, you're part of Celestial Oddities Para Seekers. I've said it so many times, I've gotten it down to where I'm pretty sure I did not mess it up at all.
You did well. You did well. It can be a bit of a tongue twister, that's for sure.
I definitely wouldn't want to be like gun to the head and have to say it 3 times fast. I would be like, all right, this isn't even fair.
Then you just do the acronym, just go cops, cops, cops. That'll work.
Well, what exactly, Michael, do you do with the team?
I'm actually kind of a rookie as far as investigation goes. So my first official investigation was on July 11th. We investigated the Anchorage Mansion in Marietta, Ohio. As far as what I do, I did get a useless journalism degree. So I'm kind of incorporating that with the team and doing a lot of the write-ups and the research for the locations that we go to. Because our goal is not only to just say, hey, here's a picture of a fucking ghost. Isn't that awesome? I want to get evidence and kind of tie it to the history of the location that we're doing.
If you would have asked me 5 years ago or maybe 6 years ago what I thought I loved most about like ghost hunting or any type of show that involves like trying to hunt something down, I'd be like, I'd obviously want to see one. But to honestly read the amount of articles that are out there about haunted places and experiences pack more of a punch than if I saw it in like a dramatization of it. Like,
Mhm.
I always wondered with those like murder shows where I was like, how did they videotape the murder and not stop the guy? Like, you're watching this happen. And then like somebody in my family was just like, it's a dramatization. Those are actors reoccurring the scene that did happen that night. And I'm like, oh, I was like, yeah, I was going to say this is kind of crappy that we're watching somebody get murdered when we should be calling for help. But like when I'm reading an article, for instance, one I came across with that was very cool with the ghosts is one called Screaming Jenny. Have you ever heard of that?
Screaming Jenny. I've heard of a lore similar to that, but what have you heard in the article? Because
It's
sometimes the lore it can be at several locations. Will have the same lore behind it.
it's basically like this railroad track with all these conductors that would hear this screaming of a woman and this burning bright light running towards their train at a certain time at night. And then they would run right through this light and it would just vanish and nothing would happen. And it's
Hmm.
based off a story of a woman that got caught on fire and and her house was right beside railroad tracks. And she ran out and she was screaming on the tracks and a train had actually hit her. So when I hear something like that, and really brings into my mind the kind of perspective I think everybody kind of has a thought about, which is there an afterlife? Is there something out there? And how exactly are they able to contact us? Do they have to be extremely, sad, or did they leave something here for them to come back? Or is it sometimes that like they sometimes get a little charge up, maybe one day out of the year where they can creep right in?
Mhm. Well, I mean, there's definitely different theories and different hauntings. There's theories that sometimes there's residual energy that's left behind, and it'll kind of play the same thing at certain times. Like it's not an intelligent haunting; it's just a reoccurring memory, maybe, of the person that passed away. That kind of goes with the stone tape theory. Is the energy will be in the stones itself, and on certain nights at certain times it'll play, the person will be walking down the steps, and if you go to interact with that person, they're not going to really say anything to you. They're just going to do what they were doing when they were alive. Plays out as a memory almost. And I think that can also go to objects like chairs that people used to sit in a lot. Certain things that just retain energy, and it's a different type of haunting, where other hauntings you can get and actually interact with spirits, and they'll give you intelligent answers to questions that you're asking them, where these ones are just kind of residual, and they're not really an intelligent spirit. It's just a role that they're playing, and you just
That's
kind of happen to see
that
it at the right time.
it seems that the residuals are more common than, like, I know people always talk about like using a Ouija board to contact the other side. I always consider that like the demons are the ones that give you the answers, the ones, the dark kind of forces, the ones you really don't want to mess with. But like a residual, for instance, like I always thought of a seashell. Are you really hearing the ocean, or is it just the memories of the ocean that have been crashing into it for so long have stained the inside of it, so when you do lift it up you do hear that? Because I mean, you hear about places that experience such grief that when you go there, it's like the weight's in the air, the tension is
Mhm.
thick, like you need a steak knife to cut through that sucker. And I'm like feeling, like if you go to Alcatraz, for instance, a place that has been around so much death, so much evil, like a concentration camp could be, like there has to be something that is left behind. Because if people talk about how we're made up of energy, what makes you think that energy just leaves?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of it's catching it at the right time too. Because I know, like we went to Anchorage Mansion for my first investigation, and it was super active. I've read other things when I was researching. 'Cause not only am I researching the place, the history behind the place, but I'm also researching other paranormal teams that have investigated before. And I came across some that said, "Hey, we didn't even get anything the whole time." And I think a lot of it's just catching things at the right time. It's like a storm coming in, and you'll get all this energy that's in that location. And for example, with the Anchorage Mansion, uh, the foundation is limestone, or I'm sorry, sandstone. It has a lot of quartz in it, and quartz is said to kind of retain paranormal energy. So it's just catching it at the right time, and there's a lot of geographic and geological things that and theories that kind of pertain to paranormal and make things more active. Like if something's on a fault line, or if something's sometimes they say storms themselves, the lightning and everything will kind of get that energy going more than on a regular night.
Me and Garrett kind of talked a little bit about like sensing the energy, kind of seeing like where like you get those feelings, those kind of things you get about people. Maybe some people might give off an energy that can unlock a certain ghost, like having a certain key. Maybe their soul's like a key. Like, so for instance, you were mentioning the investigators that had gone before you that hadn't seen anything, and then you guys have seen stuff. Maybe there was just an openness or something that was comfortable to that ghost, much like, your vibe of friends, for instance. You're comfortable around those people because that's, you just, the energy, you just feel comfortable. When when you get tensed up, I'm like, I wonder if it's the same thing with ghosts. They're more likely to show themselves when they find kind of a cult of personality, I would say.
Yeah, I mean that can be a part of it as well. Environmental things can factor in. I mean, we don't really know much about it, and so I mean, there's so many theories out there that, and it's hard to even disprove or prove a theory because I mean, it's kind of lucky that if you get anything, you kind of just were in the perfect situation. And it might be because the ghosts are more open, or the spirits are more open to you and your energy, or maybe something going on with the environment at the time that you go there. So yeah, it's really, there's so much unknown about it, and I think as their technology advances with in regards to the paranormal, and there's just more people getting involved in it, I think we'll get more solidified answers eventually, and that could take things to the next step. And I think that's what a good thing with investigations are.
Do you think that ghosts would hang around a place that was more filled with death or more filled with life? Like a hospital, for instance. Like I feel like that would be a ghost like war zone on the factor of like life being brought into this earth with people giving birth. Would be like
Mhm.
a I always thought that's what reincarnation was. There was like a million ghosts waiting outside your mom's vagina, kind of just ready to hop in, like to the body or the baby
Yeah.
that's being born in. I was like, which ghost was I? But then
Mhm.
you look at like a place like we said Alcatraz that's so stained with death, like is a place that is experiencing that on an everyday basis. I feel like as a ghost, I wouldn't haunt that area depending on how, like if it's Alcatraz, I probably would because that's where the torture was done. But if I'm like dying in an old retirement home and the spirit would just leave because of the fact is it's got another place that it's connected to. This was just the final chamber.
Yeah. Another thing going off of that is maybe they get trapped in those locations too. And they just can't leave. Or even if the energy in particular, like I have a grandma that's in a nursing home at the moment, and she has dementia, so she doesn't really know what's going on. If she were to pass away there, maybe her energy wouldn't even know that she actually passed away because they may retain the dementia even. So that may be why they're stuck there as well.
It really makes me think about the Egyptians, like with those giant pyramids and locking them in a sarcophagus. Like, did that leak capture the soul and make it stay in there? Or did that give it the ability to preserve itself when it goes? Because I always look at like if I die, for instance, if I was randomly get hit by a car, would I be how I was before I got hit by the car, or would I be a ghost with like a broken leg and like a messed up face and everything,
Yeah.
like after I get hit by the car? But then I started thinking about cremation and I go, what happens if like your vessel is also your vessel to the afterlife? So as you decompose on earth, you decompose in the spirit world. And then if somebody cremates you, you're just a pile of fucking ash.
That's true. Yeah. Well, they do say, I mean, I never really researched it that much, but I've heard that when you pass away, you lose like 3 pounds or something to that extent. And a lot of people kind of think and theorize that that may be the energy leaving your body, is that weight that's leaving. And I mean, it's possible that you could retain, like, if you get hit in the face with an axe, like if you come back as a spirit, your face is going to be mangled, or you could just be just a ball of energy. It's really hard to say.
What's the weirdest case you've ever come across? Like you've ever done research. You haven't had to, you don't have to investigate it. I'm just asking what's one that you've come across where you're like, that's either the weirdest thing or that's the craziest thing.
Um, I mean, I don't know what Garrett said to you. Him and I have been friends since high school, and the craziest thing that I actually ever came across was him and I were in a metal band when I was probably like 20, and I think he was like 18. And him and I and our one guitarist went to the cemetery that they call Hell's Gates. And we're metal, so we're like, yeah, we're gonna do some black magic shit and see what happens. So we just messed around with stuff that we had no clue, and that we probably shouldn't have been messing around with. And we did summon something there. And I mean, I won't give you all the details because I could talk about it for hours, but it was dark, and that was like the most intense thing and the most scared I've ever been in my life. And going into paranormal investigation, I was just kind of talking to Garrett about it when him and his wife came over to our house, and we just he brought it up and we started talking about it, and he talked about doing paranormal investigations, and that's what kind of got me into it. Was like, all right, well, we experienced a super negative thing at this location. Let's see what else we can experience, and that's what kind of got me interested in everything. Was that experience?
I
Um,
had it was funny. Me and my buddy, we live close to this place called Berlin, and it's called World's Coolest Small Town, which is a load of shit. It's a nice place, but it's not the best. And it, it was a lot better back in the day before everything became new. But there was an old cemetery that used to be by an abandoned church, and we're walking by, and it's like midnight, full moon out and everything. So it's like perfect setting, and we're just literally like kind of scared already. Like we're 14 years old. We're trying to skate home. And my buddy goes to me, his name is Matt. He goes, "Hey man, I bet you $20 there's a gravestone that says Indiana Jones on it." And I'm like, fucking Indiana Jones. And I'm thinking like Crystal of the Temple Skull and all this. And he goes,
yeah.
"Dude, I bet you. And we go over there and there is a straight up Indiana Jones gravestone. I was like, so their last name was Jones and their first name was Indiana. And I was like, that's freaking nuts. But
Yeah.
all the gravestones, we're sitting there looking around trying to find our last names, because that's what you do. You look for someone that has a similar name to you, and you're like, oh, that could be my whatever. And I'm sitting there like dusting off a few of them, and all you hear is these bells. And I don't know if they were on a timer, but it was church bells. It was ding, ding. I was like, oh, and we just booked it, hightailed it all the way to his house like scared little girls. Next thing you know, I'm in his house or whatever. We're about to have dinner. And by dinner, as in when you're a kid and you're a teenager and it's midnight, anything in the snack pantry is your dinner. Okay.
Oh, for sure.
But I was asking him, I was like, that was a crazy thing that this bells just went off. He goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you ever thought about messing with a Ouija board? I'm like, messing with, we just got scared off church and you want to summon Satan? He goes, dude, they sell it at Toys R Us. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. But I've had so many paranormal experiences in my life, not like that, where I kind of creep myself out, but more on the aspect of like things that have randomly just happened where I'm like, how the fuck is that possible?
Hmm.
So it kind of leads me to the question, what have you experienced in your life that have you kind of come across before dealing with the investigative team, where you've been like, besides with Garrett and everything, have you ever experienced anything on your own?
No, to be honest with you, the only one I've really experienced was when we went to that cemetery and we essentially summoned something dark, and I didn't really want to mess with paranormal after that because it scared the crap out of me. Our friend literally got oppressed. His pupils were dilated, and all kinds of horrible stuff, and I just never really wanted to even think of that moment again until Garrett and I started talking about it. Besides that, I've never really experienced anything, so I was a total skeptic. Even before that, and then going into that, I just yeah, I never really wanted to dabble in it, and I tried to black it out of my mind to just not even think about it.
I think the biggest fear for me about trying something like that, kind of people that are into cults and trying to do some weird sacrifice stuff. Actually, heard a really good story at a Christmas Eve party of a guy that was almost involved into like a cult sacrifice.
Yeah.
And he eventually escaped. He thought he was just gonna get laid, and it was not what he thought it was. Um,
Yeah. Then they start stabbing him in the chest and ripping out his organs. He's like,
he
"Oh, well, I
he
guess I
was
shouldn't
like,
have done this."
I was really drunk. She told me to take my clothes off and sit in a chair. I sat in the chair. She tied me up to the chair. A bunch of people came out of the closet in cloaks and started spraying chicken blood on me. I was like,
Oh,
what the
geez.
fuck? And it's like the woman that did it is like popular. She writes our newspaper. So it's like everyone's like, she's a freak. But it's when it goes down to like summoning something, like if you would have like conjured up something or summoning something, I don't think I could live with the fact that I just released this thing into the world. I'd have to feel like it'd be like a Liam Neeson movie where I have to hunt this fucking thing down and kill it.
Yeah, I actually never went back to that place afterwards. I know Garrett did several times, and a similar situation happened with a girl that they were with the one time. Because like you said earlier, sometimes you don't get there, and or you get there and nothing happens. But he did go back, and a girl was under this tree where they say the portal is, and they found her with her eyes, her pupils dilated, and just staring up in the sky underneath this tree. Where we also found our friend. He had his situation, and both of them will not talk to us about what happened, what they saw, or anything. When you bring it up, they shut down and freak out. Um, so it's we're planning on going back.
When you do research for a place, for instance, what really catches your eye about a spot that you want to check out? Is it just because it's close, or is it like a certain story that you're reading from it?
Well, it depends. I mean, I like doing some of the local stuff. I know I did a little bit of research on the Blue Mist Trail. It's a place in North Park in Pittsburgh, and my wife actually and I actually went there. I called it the Paranormal Date Night, and we didn't really get any evidence, but we did definitely get some feelings. Like we both felt a cold hand on our shoulder as we were leaving one of the sites there. So Garrett and I are actually going to be going back in a couple of weeks, but I wanted to try to get, because there's so much lore with those local places. And this one, there was a witch's house, there was a KKK house, there was I forget all the different stories. There's a hanging tree where they killed people, like all this local lore. So I tried to do research to see if there is anything true. Were there any murders at this location that were reported? And I couldn't find any. And I actually worked with didn't work with him, but I had some email correspondence with a historian that wrote a book about haunted locations in Pennsylvania. And he had told me that he got so far, he actually found somebody that used to live at this location, but they couldn't get any concrete evidence. Like, were there any, satanic rituals or anything done? And that the woman was like, I was a little kid, so I don't really know. So he couldn't get any further. And he has a theory. As Thomas White, he's an author. I can't remember the name of the book that he had written. I think it's something like Haunted Locations in Western Pennsylvania or something to that extent. But he has a theory where with these local places, there's all this lore, and the lore kind of evolves over time with things that are going on in the country or in that location. Like the KKK lynching tree that they had there. That kind of became popular in the 70s when there was a race riot in Pittsburgh. And there's Western PA wasn't really active with KKK, but that kind of bled into that area, and a lot of other locations around Pittsburgh that are said to be haunted had the same. Oh, we have a lynching tree. Then they started saying that, well, there's satanic rituals. That lore kind of developed in the 80s during the satanic panic. So lore can kind of evolve over time. But my theory is there has to be some kind of energy at these locations, even if the lore is not correct, for people to think like, oh, this is a haunted place. That's why I want to investigate some of these local places, kind of get the lore and see if there's any actual factual information about the lore, and dig as much as you can, and then go out there and do an investigation and see what you can find out, see if there is at least energy there.
Do you think a lot of it happens to do with, like, we can talk about different brain developments of people, but on the aspect of like creativity, it seems like some people lose their creativity, like it's kind of just taken out of them as a child. And I think that's why children are so able to communicate to these things from a different side or something. Like, it seems like they're
Mhm.
more of a spiritual gateway because they still have their imagination. But
Yeah.
like, you can't expect a kid to, say some words in some language that they've never heard of before, like Latin or something, and then walk on top of the roof and spin around 40 times. You're like, all right, that kid can be imaginative as hell, but that's not normal. It's, you see in movies all the time, and I think movies definitely do it a disservice because nobody's going to know what a ghost is like. But I think the main reason why I never really went to a place that might be haunted or visited a place like that is because I definitely think that it's real. I've had some experiences myself, but I just I don't like the idea of like something. It's like a shark, man. You can't see it, you can't do this, and then
Yeah.
next thing you know, like, getting hot or getting like a rash on your shoulder, or feeling something taking your basically breath out of your lungs. I'm like, there's just no chance. You're literally dealing with something from the other side. And what do you think would be like the most common ghost? Like, not a residual or anything, just but like, what do you think the most, like, if you had to pick a spot in the world, a certain thing, what would you categorize it? Would it be like a place where there was highly active, like, you know murder, or would it be a place that was like maybe accidental? You always hear about the lady in red, who's you heard about the lady in white, the woman that kills herself on her wedding night because her
Oh
whatever her
yeah.
fiance didn't
There's
come.
several locations that have the lady in white too. I mean,
Sure, it's
it's
probably happened
crazy that
everywhere. How many guys don't want to go through with it and get cold feet, and the woman just freaks out and jumps off a bridge? It's not saying anything against
exactly.
women, but I mean, shit, if I got left at the altar in front of all my friends and family, I wouldn't be in the best of cheery moods either.
But for exactly, I'd probably be drunk. I don't know if I'd kill myself and
Mhm.
start haunting places, but but yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I don't know. I mean, it really depends on when you go there. Is it in a right state as far as the weather, or are you open-minded enough to experience something? I think that there are energies all around us at all times, so maybe it's potential that any place could actually be active at a given time. That's a possibility. I know when there is negativity, like at an asylum or at one of the places I always wanted to go to, but I don't know if I got there, if I'd be brave enough to even go in, is the Rams Inn in, I'm going to butcher the name, I think it's Gloucestershire, England. Um, it was built in 1049 on a pagan burial ground, and they literally keep finding bodies as they remodel this place and do the upkeep to make sure it doesn't fall down. They'll dig and put up walls, but every time they dig into the place, they find more dead bodies. And that place is super active, apparently. Asylums are usually super active. So usually, yeah, if there is a negative happening, usually there is, some kind of residual energy there. But there can be positive ones. I mean, where we were at Anchorage Mansion, I mean, there was death there, but there wasn't any like murders that I'm aware of, at least. It was mainly they were part of the Underground Railroad, the owners there, and what we experienced was more with the servants that in the servants' quarters. And I know there was one that died. He wasn't murdered. He suffocated when a gas lamp shut off at night. Um, so I mean, I'm sure that would suck really bad. But I, I mean, for the most part, everybody all the spirits that we and energies we experienced were pretty positive there. So I think it's just hitting these places at the right time. I mean, yeah, more negative, it might be more active, but I think it's more open to, or how you go in with an open mind, and also, if there's any geological, weather related aspects that make things more active.
I try and think of like, why is that person a ghost? Maybe not on the event, but like, did when they died, if there's a heaven and there's a hell, and then they talk about there's reapers that come and take your spirit or transport it to the other side so you can go where your decision is. I'm like, do you just walk away from the guy with the pen that's like, you're going here, and you're like, I'm good, I'm gonna stay right here, and then you end up just getting left there? Like, is it a choice like that? I'm like, if that's possible, I mean, how many spirits, we talk about helpful ones, for instance, the ones that come that just stay because they need to protect the family, they need to do
Mhm.
something, they need to leave guidance. I mean, I feel like if it's on that side of things, it's got to be a very strong connection where you feel like, I just can't leave them without any information on how to survive. I just can't.
Yeah.
And then there's one where it's like, I can't believe they did this to me, I'm going to get them back, and then it comes back as vengeful. I'm like, man, it's really hard to talk about paranormal stuff if you've really never experienced things, when I feel like everybody might have had a sliver of it. I think it's a hell of a lot easier though to communicate it with your dreams. I just feel like in your dreams, you're the most, there's nothing, there's no thoughts, there's nothing blocking you. You're literally drifted away. And I feel like that's a great way when people like lose a loved one, they talk about how they dreamed of their loved one, whether it was themselves kind of dealing with the, the misery or the missing of somebody. But I'm like, or is that the person communicating you in a way of giving you peace?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I know going into like a meditative state, which is similar to being asleep and dreaming, is some people practice that during paranormal investigations, just to open their mind a little bit. And I've seen positive results with people doing that. They've had experiences and visions of um, the spirits or energies in the household, and they're able to communicate better when they are in a meditative state. And I haven't done much research as far as dreams, but I imagine it's pretty similar to that.
Do you think that, have you ever heard of a tulpa?
No.
A tulpa is like if you believe in something so much that you can actually conjure it and make it real.
Okay.
I look at like with social media and how people are just like, you talked about journalism, for instance, which I fucking love. I think it's fascinating. But the reason why it's kind of a dead art is because anybody that makes a fucking blog is technically a journalist, which really
Exactly.
sucks to the actual art, because if anybody's out there listening, it's pretty fucking hard to actually go and get factual and interview people and actually do things to get the information to make an article, compared to some person saying that if you eat 2 boxes of Raisin Bran, you have stomach cancer. Fuck you, whoever put that on WebMD. You scared the shit out of me. But what I'm saying is, when you believe in something, there's a site called Creepypasta, which is a bunch of kids basically creating articles and creating fake stories, and it's how the Slender Man thing
The Slender
started.
Man, yeah, yeah.
If you believe in something so much, can you make it possible to like millions and millions of people believe in something? I know millions of people believe in, you know, Garth Brooks. Well, he is something, but still, he's creepy. But a million people believe into one thing. Could they make it real? Could they literally conjure it up into existence? Is that a possibility? Because the government tried this a long time ago in a project where they had a group of scientists pull out a Ouija board. And for like, I think a week before that, they had to think of a ghost, create this ghost, and believe it into existence, believe that it was real. Then they tried to summon it with the Ouija board. And a lot of them talked about some weird things that were happening, whether that was just all of them kind of psyching themselves out, or was that something that is of a possibility?
Definitely. I mean, even looking at religion, like people believe in something that may not be true. You don't know, but is it possible because they believe in it in heaven that when they die they're going to go to heaven? It makes it heaven. I don't know. It's really hard to even theorize anything in that. I'll have to do some research in that. I actually like that concept.
I know there's a program I studied a long time ago, which was the fact of being, I think it's called, oh God, it starts with an O. It's an osmonaut, I think it is, not cosmonaut. It's in something. It's a person that goes into somebody's dreams, like the movie Inception. A way of
Okay.
being able to like, because I have problems with sleep. I'm an insomniac, so I don't sleep. My buddy sleeps with his eyes open, which is fucking weird.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I was like, let's study sleep a little bit. And I kind of came up with like a sleep theory that it's like the hypnic jerk is your body, is your soul coming back to your body, because those doorways that you're opening up in your brain that you call your dreams are really alternate universes, kind of different things for your brain to wander. But going into somebody's dreams, there's a way of fixing a nightmare. And that is like, let's say me and you are on a boat and there's a million sharks around us and we're sinking. If that's the dream and that's the nightmare, we can either succumb to the nightmare by letting it take us, it'll end it immediately. Or when you wake up from the dream, writing it down exactly in crucial details. There's sudden parts of the dream that stick out, that are able to let you know that you're in a dream, which goes into lucid dreaming, but also kind of giving you hints on how to overcome them and problems that are going on in your life that are reflecting into your dream. So when you write those things down in your journal, you realize, oh, sharks, this, that. I'm obviously afraid of not being able to save myself when I'm coming up against a battle or I'm coming up against a foe, because you're not going to win against a shark unless you got a knife or you got some Jason Statham skills. So writing that down kind of narrows down things in your own life. But how do you narrow down something when it comes to maybe a family member reaching out into your dreams? Because I've had that before. And I've literally got information from it that maybe I heard when I was a kid, but I'm pretty proof positive I didn't. My great grandfather passed away. And one thing I never knew about him was that he did NASCAR before it was NASCAR. He did it on the dirt tracks and he won lots of trophies. I have never seen any of these trophies before. And when I mentioned it to my dad, I was like, I had a weird dream. Did Pop Pop ever mention that he was a NASCAR driver or something? He goes, a long time ago when I was like 10 years old, I used to actually go to the tracks and watch them. He goes, how do you know that? Because I never mentioned that to you. And I'm like, I had a dream. And then my dad, like, he kind of believes in it a little bit because my mom had done a paranormal thing that we had nobody has ever really. Once you see that, it's like you're changed.
Yeah.
A little girl had gone missing, and we talk about feeling energies and stuff. Well, my mom had a dream of the little girl that told her exactly where she was located, and all she said was, "Tell my parents that I'm okay now." And my dad's not a skeptic guy at all. He's watching the news, and we're seeing the girl again. This is probably when I was like 10 years old, 11 years old. And I'm sitting there like watching the TV, like, wow, a little girl like kind of my age has gone missing. That really sucks. And I kept thinking of milk cartons, like seeing them on a milk carton. I don't know why. I
Mm.
just kept thinking that, even though it doesn't really happen. Um, and my dad just goes, "You hear your mom in there?" I'm like, "Yeah." My mom runs out and grabs my dad and runs into the other room. And I'm like, "What's happening right now? I don't understand. I'm just gonna sit here and eat this candy bar." And as my mom's freaking out in there. My mom had told my dad that the little girl that came to her in a dream, and this is where the body was buried, and they need to call it into the cops anonymously. And my dad's like, we're not fucking doing that. Are you kidding me? I'm going to get traced back here. I'm
Yeah,
going to get
exactly.
arrested. And she said, do it or I will. And my dad's like, fine. My dad calls it in. And the next day they found the little girl. I swear to you. And my
Wow.
dad has not forgot that ever since. And he believes in it 100% now. So like when I get dreams, like deja vu, usually you get it when you're young and it stops. I get
Mhm.
deja vu a lot. And I mean, shit happens and I'll avoid it in my actual life. Like I'll just be like, okay, I'm remembering this. Let me do something different. And it changes it. But like
Mhm.
I had sent a message to uh my mom, I think, man, almost a year now ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And I said that my grandma wasn't going to make it to August. This is true. We're in July right now. Just last week, my grandma had told everybody in our family that she has a terminal illness and she's probably not going to make it to the end of July.
Oh man,
My
I'm
mom
sorry to hear that.
fucking looked at me and was like, how did you like and then I started talking to my grandma about it. I was like, I knew you were going to leave in August. And she goes, yeah, you have a gift like I do. And my mom has talked about my grandma seeing ghosts and stuff. And I've
Mhm.
never really truly believed into it. But just with everything I have experienced through these types of weird things happening, I know people are listening like bullshit. No, it's like, this is a real thing that's happening. There's about 5 days left in July from when we're recording this. And my grandma knew the date too. She's like, in August, I have the rest of July. That's all that matters. I'm like, how do
Wow.
you know? The doctors are telling you December and you know August as well. And she goes, because you have the gift. And I'm like, is it a gift or is it a curse? Because it turns into the sixth sense. If I see a kid with his head blown fucking off walking into my bedroom, I don't consider that a gift, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there is some kind of sensitivity that can be passed down from generation to generation. It sounds like you have it, your mom had it, your grandma had it. It's definitely something that you should, if you would want to, and be open to explore and see if there's anything else that you might have, some kind of sense to. I know my one aunt. She's not really a medium, but she does have senses that's similar to that. Like she can go into a place and kind of sense energy, and she's actually been to like Salem and all kinds of different places. And she came into our house and said, you know, there's definitely something in the room that I'm in right now. And I haven't experienced anything yet, but definitely gonna anything she says, because I believe that she does have that type of sensitivity too. Um, so some people are gifted with it, and like you said, if it is a gift or it may be a curse, it's definitely something you should look into.
I brought up this question to Tom after he had mentioned he was or he saw the ghost of an evil llama or something that he was talking about
I
with a
heard
woman.
the demonic llama.
Would you rather be haunted by a person or an animal?
It depends. Depends on the person and the animal, if they're negative or positive. Um, if my mother or something, I don't know how I'd take that. But if it were my dog, that Buster, that died, and I love Buster, I'd be open to that.
But
So
it's
probably,
like Pet Cemetery where they're evil.
well, I don't know. Buster was a pretty lazy ass dog, so I don't know how. Even if he was evil, I don't know how much damage he could really do.
Laziness is evil in its own way.
Yeah. I mean, he was literally like the Beverly Hillbillies dog. It just kind of lays around.
I look at yeah, because it really brought to the question. I don't want to shout him out because I think he is not a really bad guy after the documentary I saw with him. But Michael Vick, for instance, I'm like, how many dogs are haunting him?
Oh, I hope a lot. I mean, I, he did actually go to jail and do his time for that. And I know a lot of other athletes who do worse and they just kind of get away with it. Like, I mean, freaking Ray Lewis allegedly was involved in a murder and nothing happened, but Vick killed, you know, did dog fights and that he went to jail. So it's kind of like, I don't get how the NFL even does
That was
anything
a
wrong.
big debate in my freaking household because I'm a Ravens fan. My buddy's a Redskins fan. He always brings up Ray Lewis. And I'm like, if you check any member on the Redskins, they have all been to jail either multiple times. I'm like, nobody in the NFL is freaking you're not in a passive or happy mood if you're going into football. You're there to hurt somebody. That's kind of
Yeah,
the whole.
yeah.
It's like saying you don't watch NASCAR for the crashes.
No, you watch them to go around in a circle over and over again because it's awesome.
That's what you do for 400 fucking laps.
I know. I never got people do that, but to each their own.
I always like. Have you ever seen the movie Final Destination?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a possibility? Like death can sometimes come at you like that, like in a way of setting something up for something to happen? Because before that movie came out of Final Destination, where they're at the NASCAR track, I had
Yeah.
gone to a NASCAR and I was sitting in the skybox. Yes, the skybox. The only way to really enjoy it because you're not in 1,000-degree heat and you're enjoying crab legs instead of, you know, dying of heat exhaustion and peanuts. But a person I saw was running down the bleachers, and me and my dad, we went down to go stand by the fence and see the cars as they go by. And a person was holding their eye like this. And I was like, what the fuck happened? A lug nut from the car had shot off and flew up into the air and hit the person in the eye. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, is that death's way of slowly trying to kill you? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if that's a possibility. Like, is there any way, like, you could, miss out on it? Like, how many times have you thought, like, imagine if that event happened this way instead of that way? What would change? What would our history be like if JFK lived?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a butterfly effect with any scenario. And same with premonitions. I mean, uh, that guy with the lug nut, he should have had a premonition not to stand there, and maybe it would have hit somebody else. Like if he would have bent down, maybe it would have taken somebody else out and actually went into their eye, into their brain, and killed them. I mean, there's definitely a butterfly effect with every action, and there is a possibility. I don't rule out anything after being in that cemetery and hearing like demonic roars and all that shit. I'm not really skeptic on anything. I mean, it's possible that death does have a design and you have a time and it is what it is. It's definitely a possibility. And if you somehow cheat it, then I mean, eventually it's going to be your time.
What would you say would be the most beneficial thing you've learned about doing the Celestial Oddities Para Seekers? Damn, I'm
Um,
2 for 2. I'm 2 for 2.
you're doing well. You're doing well. I would say the big thing that I like about it is I used to be really into history when I was in high school. Then college came around and I, killed a bunch of brain cells and whatnot. So that kind of went on the wayside. But doing this again and, getting to do research on historical locations is kind of, it's my favorite part of it. I mean, my wife and I took her niece to Lake Erie recently, and they were all about, oh, let's go swimming and do this. I'm like, no, I want to hear about like the Native American wars that happened and the Misery Bay where a bunch of people died and they had to throw their bodies in the bay because it was too cold to dig into the ground at the time. Like it's just the history of these locations and getting back into that. And that's my goal, is just to be able to do these investigations and somehow come up with information that ties back to the history that maybe there's some certain things that there's questions still. Like one place I always wanted to go to, and I hope to someday, is the Borden House. Did you ever hear of Lizzie Borden?
Mm-mm.
There was a Borden House where it was actually, there's a lot of history behind it. It's most famous for the axe murders that happened in 1892, I think it was. Don't quote me on the year. But there was Andrew Borden, and I can't remember his wife's name. They were brutally murdered. I think he got hit with an axe like 19 times in the head, and his wife got hit 11 times, and they just never solved the murder. They always thought that it was Lizzie Borden, and there's like horror movies about Lizzie Borden, and the axe murders, but they still have it as an open case, even though Lizzie Borden's dead and it's all gone. But I'd like to go to that location and see if you can talk to Andrew or his wife and see if you can get more information, figure out maybe it was Lizzie or maybe it was somebody else. I mean, they had some other people that they were looking at, and I think just being able to do that and tie into the history of a place is my favorite part of doing the investigation.
The one thing I give a couple credits to the Mormon people. One, I don't know if anybody told them about COVID, so hopefully they figured that one out. Two, the fact technology, I think it's good to isolate like that. And three is the fact that they write a journal every single day. In this journal, they write about their experiences in life. And this is recorded all the way basically until the day they die or until the day they stop being Mormon. So I've talked to a few people that have used to be Mormon. And they have talked about, they have journals from like their great, 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 great ancestors during the times of the Indians. And those experiences, I fucking love that. I love hearing what's going on through their heads at this time. People that talk about having like a family member's journal all the way to the day they died when they were going through like an illness or something. I'm like, log that shit. That's what this is basically doing for us. It's logging something.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know what was going through their head and trying to think of so many questions that you could have asked. Like, I could have a million questions for Leonardo da Vinci, and that's the only reason I touch a Ouija board, if I could bring him back and just ask him, what the fuck were you thinking? Like, how did you meet aliens? Or I would love to talk to Paul Revere on his ride through town saying the British
Mm-hmm.
are coming. What was going through your head at any moment? Like, you could have just been too afraid, too nervous, and maybe you got the shits. You had to stop. What would happen?
Just shit himself. I mean, he got the job done.
Couldn't tell
But
anybody that the British are coming because he's sitting there wiping his ass. The British are coming. I am taking the Browns to the Super Bowl. That hasn't even been invented yet.
yeah. Just gotta pull it up and run, buddy.
Would you have any questions for anybody, and who would it be that you would ask questions to?
Um,
That's a good question.
that is a good question. I mean, there's so many different options. I mean,
Pull that one out of the old noodle.
yeah. I mean that. Oh, trying to think of certain crimes that have occurred and just see if maybe we can get an answer. Like like what's her name? OJ's wife. Like
I was literally gonna turn this into a two-parter. One, you could pick somebody who's alive, and then you have to pick somebody who's dead. So
yeah.
if I was literally gonna say before you said that was I would like to ask OJ if he actually did it.
See,
Two,
that's that sense. That's that extra sense that you have. You were able to know that I was gonna say
dude,
that.
I'm telling you, I get weird feelings about people. I'm calling Mr. Rogers. I think that there's something wrong with that guy. I think there's something seriously that he's hidden for so long in the basement, like that
Yeah.
you're gonna dig up a secret about him. And be like, I can't believe we worship. I called Bill Cosby. I called everything else. Kevin Spacey, Chris D'Elia, TikTok. I said that was bad, and it's all coming true. So I'm going with my gut on a lot of this stuff. I'm calling that, and
Mr. Rogers.
I'm calling Papa John's. I don't think
Papa John's was already he's already got the
in
whole racist
2018. Yeah, he had to step down, but I think he's an alcoholic.
thing. Okay.
I hope he's listening.
I hope so too. I hope your reach is that far.
I've said this on so many podcasts. I hope he hears it. I'm not picking you specifically. I just think that when you come on there, you just act a little bit weird, sir. And if you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, let's shoot the shit, because I would like to know how many times you beat your wife in an afternoon.
He's calling you out, Papa John. Make it happen.
Okay,
No, it's funny you actually say Mr. Rogers too, because my dad always felt that way. And like a lot of my friends would watch it, and my dad wouldn't let me watch it because he's like, this guy's weird.
He's
like just
weird
playing
as
with
shit.
puppets and shit.
There's something like I said it in a podcast, and my buddy sent me a GIF on TikTok, or not TikTok, on Twitter, and was like this, and then it's Mr. Rogers with the clown mask, and he goes, like with his face, but it's so serious. It's like, whoa, that guy's got. He's a killer or something, or he likes kids. I don't know, but there's one of those two.
Yeah. And I can't say too much because he's kind of part of the Pittsburgh Pride, like because he's from the area. I think my friends might kill me if I say too much bad about that.
My mom literally told me, she goes, "Shut up, not Mr. Rogers." I said, "It's Mr. Rogers. Just wait. It's gonna come out in like a year now." They found dead bodies in Benjamin Franklin's basement, so I just gotta say, anybody's up for grabs right now.
No, yeah, oh yeah. I mean, there's all those celebrities like Joe Paterno, even with that's a controversial one, and just I mean, everyone has skeletons in their closet, and Mr. Rogers just seems so perfect that there's got to be something. I agree with that one.
Nobody loves their neighbor that much. Okay, now who would you ask dead and who would you ask alive?
Oh man, dead would have to be. Oh, I'm trying to think. This is a good question. I wasn't prepared for this one.
You can't say Jesus either. Could you really turn water into wine? Yes, I could.
I would say dead. I'd have to go with the Borden thing. I mean, I've researched that one a lot. I would have to say maybe if Lizzie did it, and if there was something that caused her to do it, because there was also murders prior to that one that aren't as famous. There was actually the Borden family lived there for a long time. And I don't know if it was Lizzie's aunt or great aunt or whatever, but one of her relatives, before she was even born, killed her 3 kids by throwing them in the well at the house, and then killed herself. Jesus. So I kind of wonder, with that much negativity, is it just coincidental that these people are murdering each other, or was there something causing them? So I would say that one would probably be my dead one.
Okay, who's the alive one?
The alive one.
It's a hard choice. You got so many
options. It is
options.
really a hard choice.
I took OJ from you, so that was a big one.
I know. I mean, that's my go-to.
Who doesn't want to know? Why were you wearing a glove and then trying on another glove? What the fuck?
Yeah. Alive. Yes, not to get political, but if he had to answer any of my questions, I would say probably Trump. just because I'm sure he has a lot of skeletons in his closet.
He's so open about a
I mean,
lot of it. I know that.
I know exactly. I'm gonna say that for now, but if anything comes to mind while we're, I might comment on this podcast and on Facebook if I get another one.
Change your answer to you want to ask Gandhi a question.
Gandhi?
That'd be a good guy to ask a
Be a
question
good
to.
one,
Why the
yeah.
fuck did you not eat anything?
Or Hitler.
I would ask him so many questions, like what happened to you and when did it start? I'd like a time machine to go back to that moment and punch whoever told you that nonsense.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he's like the biggest evil genius ever. It's just Hitler. I mean, any one of them. Bin Laden. Just any of them.
You would like, okay, what would be the worst way to die? For me, I feel like it'd be like somebody finding me while I was like watching porn.
Now, watching porn or David Carradine style with the noose around your neck.
You ever seen the movie World's Greatest Dad?
I have, yes.
That's what I'm saying. Imagine that. I would hate to die like that.
I mean, that one, I would hate to be found, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure getting your intestines ripped out like William Wallace did in Braveheart, I'm sure that's not a good way to go either.
Maybe
So you got to factor in, is it brutality or is it embarrassment that you're worried about more?
I feel like you could drag me behind a car, but just don't let me be embarrassed when I die.
Yeah, just make sure my pants stay on and I didn't shit myself.
Make sure nobody draws dicks on my forehead.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, I think I've wasted a little bit enough of your time, man, and I appreciate you for doing the podcast, dude. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I think that's 4 members of the team down, and each one has been amazing. Now, please plug your Instagram, plug everything where people can find your awesome work.
Well, I know we got the Celestial Oddities Para Seekers. We got Facebook, Instagram. I handle, and I haven't done much yet because we just kind of started, a blog on WordPress. I know we've had the links shared on Facebook and everything. So pretty much we even have a fucking TikTok. So any social media, just look up Celestial Oddities and we'll be there.
You got to take away the TikTok, man.
Dude, it wasn't my idea.